Good afternoon. This is the August 3rd, 2020 meeting of the Glendale Water and Power Commission. My name is Sarojini Lal. I'm a member of the commission, and I'll be leading today's meeting in the absence of our commission president, President Kadikian. Madam Clerk, can we have the first item?
1. Roll call. Before I proceed with the roll call, President Kadikian and Commissioner Avanesian will not be attending tonight's GWP Commission. Commissioner Flanagan.
Here.
Commissioner Jasmadarian.
Here.
Commissioner Lau.
Present. Madam Clerk, can we have the next item?
Item 2, approval of the July 6, 2020 meeting minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as written.
I'll second it.
Okay, that item passes. Madam Clerk, the next item?
3, GWP Commission staff and comments.
Do we have any staff comments? No? Commissioners, do you have any comments?
No.
Not at this time. Nope.
Okay, next item.
4, reports. 4A, legislative update.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, President Pro Tem Law, and Commissioners and staff. My name is Leo Zalian. I'll be providing you with the legislative update. To start with, if we can have next slide, with just a calendar overview. So August 31st was the last day for each house to pass a bill. So there are about 700 bills or so that have been that will be going to the governor. And September 30th is the last day for the governor to pass or veto bills. And of course, November 3rd is our general election that's coming up. I'd like to start with the state budget, a few highlights from there. So on June 29th, Governor Newsom signed the 2020 Budget Act and appropriated about $202.1 billion, which strengthens emergency response, protects public health and safety, and promotes economic recovery. And this bill included, unfortunately, a $54.3 billion shortfall caused because of the COVID-19 recession. Additionally, there was $2.6 billion was allocated for county and local jurisdictions to assist with COVID-19 responses. Next slide, please. Before going on to the number of key bills that we wanted to cover, I wanted to mention that there are a number of bills that we're tracking in the beginning of the legislative session. Due to the global pandemic, many of the bills weren't passed the committee because the governor directed the legislature to focus mainly on bills that have to do with COVID response and economic recovery. So many of the bills that I'll be covering today might actually not go to the next legislative session, or they'll be postponed to the next session. But with that, we'll cover a few of the bills that we're tracking right now. So first one, we have AB 740 with Assemblymember Brookie. This is in regards to microgrids, and this requires utilities not to impose a size cap on microgrid projects. We just learned today that this bill also has died, so we won't be moving on to the next legislative session. Next, we have AB 841 with Assemblymember King. This is adding additional infrastructure to support charging stations. We just also learned that the POUs, the public utilities, were actually removed from this legislation, so this will not apply to us as well. And it's moving on in the second house, so it's going to be in the Senate side now. Next, we have AB 1720. This is the long duration energy storage. This is the next era bill that has about 4,000 megawatts of procurement mandate. We're hearing on this bill that it might get pulled from the committee as well. So we're waiting to see if it actually gets a hearing. It was scheduled for today. Fortunately, this bill was also removed. Next, we have AB 2827. This regards in this connection. So as utility shut-offs have been a very important topic in this cycle, this also implements a 3-cycle suspension of shut-offs if the state has declared an emergency state of order. Next bill, we have SB 364. This also allows active non-residential solar energy systems constructed prior to January 1st, 2025 to be exempt from taxation unless ownership changed. So this is something about solar energy systems. And we have a few bills on the water side that we'll cover. We have AB 2060. This defines lead fee to mean not more than 1 cubic meter of lead in certain tests. This is in the second house, meaning this is moved to the second house already in the Senate side to be reviewed and hopefully approved. AB 2560, this adds additional procedures for water quality notification and response levels. This is also in the second house to see what happens in the next cycle. And SB 1099 and SB 1185, the next 2 bills, have to do with backup generators. So this additional exemptions for utilities to run backup generators during the de-energization event. When shutoffs happen, the water utilities were able to use backup generators to pump water to customers. And that concludes my report. We'll be happy to answer any questions that the Commission might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
I do. Thank you very much for your report and your update. I was curious about the microgrid bill AB 740 that you said. I was going to ask you the question, do you know what size the cap used to be or is for Glendale Water and Power? I don't know if we have a cap for interconnecting a microgrid. Is it still the 1 megawatt per customer, or is that, how do we relate to that bill? Would that have done anything to us had it passed?
Unfortunately, I don't know what we currently have right now, but that's something I can find out. There are a few, if it passed, we would have to follow this new legislation as well. And I believe the cap for next cycle, so it'll be coming back maybe next legislative session to look at what the requirements are. They just want to make sure that POUs and IOs don't have a cap to follow for projects as microgrids that the state wants to implement.
Gotcha. Okay, well, thank you. I would be curious to know what our cap is right now. And I think this relates to just interconnection of net energy metered resources. That it seems to me that if we have a willing customer that's willing to put more storage or more capability on the site, that should be something we would look very carefully at. But thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Jasmine-Darian, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. I have a question, which is if GWP had taken a position for or against any of this legislation, would that be indicated on the PowerPoint, or were you simply tracking these bills? Were there any that the utility had strong feelings about either way?
We haven't taken formal positions, but we have communicated with our associations, CMUA and SCAPA, with certain position on a number of the bills that we're tracking. But we currently haven't taken any specific position on any of these bills that are listed on the presentation.
Okay.
But there might be forthcoming as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I figured you would tell us, but I thought I would check in case I had missed it.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, well, if there are no further questions, thank you very much for the report, and we'll move to the next item, Madam Clerk.
4B, customer service update.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Tammy Valier, Customer Services Administrator. I want to share a little bit about what is happening with regard to the customer service operation, in particular over the past several months. As a result of COVID on March 13th, the city did close all public counters, and that did include customer service. To notify our customers, signs were posted on the building doors, on our website, social media, and we put a pre-recorded message on the telephone. Most of the customers that typically come into our building are there to make a payment, so we were directing them to our alternative payment options, such as the telephone, again, our website. We have drop boxes, and then the 7-Eleven service, which is Pay Near Me. All other in-person services, such as starting or stopping service, applying for PBC programs, and payment arrangements, have for some time been accepted over the telephone. When the March 19th stay-at-home order was issued, customer service had a contingency plan in place, and we were able to immediately transition 100% of our office staff to work remote. We also have our field techs, and rather than them reporting to the office, they reported directly to their vehicles. Then from March 20th to April 8th, we had an interactive recording that asked customers specific questions, and they would leave a message, and it would include their name, their account number, or their callback number. And then the CSRs would retrieve the message and return the call. CSRs also responded to customer emails, and the billing section's transition was seamless, as was the field section. Then on April 9th, the remote call center began taking live calls using SP350 soft phone, which is an application that allows the automated call distribution system to be delivered to the CSRs through their laptops. And they were given high quality headsets so that they could take the live calls directly from their home. For the following 2.5 months, we offered 100% remotely, and then on June 22nd, we began transitioning about 25% of our staff back to the office on a 4-week rotation. We will see customers by appointment only, although there have been very few requests. Since that time, we've averaged about 2 appointments per day. As far as our customer support plan, we do have a moratorium on utility disconnects and the suspension of late fees. GWP has made the decision that we will continue the suspension of these actions through the end of the year. From April through June, we also waived all new service deposits. And for customers seeking payment assistance due to financial hardship, and if they had a deposit with us, we would apply that deposit to their balance rather than waiting the full year of on-time payments. So far, we've applied over $300,000 to about 725 customers. We've also been extremely flexible in our payment plans, and then we, of course, refer our customers to any payment assistance programs, whether that's our Helping Hand or Customer Care or LIHEAP, which is a federal low-income program. As far as the customer service operational impacts, we did have some issues the first 2 weeks. Other than that, there's been very little impact to the customer service operation. During those first 2 weeks, we were able to return over 1,400 calls from the messages that were left, but there were also corrupted files that we could not retrieve. There was also a few connectivity issues, primarily just the learning curve for CSRs to remote to their desktops here at City Campus, but those issues were worked out very quickly. We did see an increase in online customer requests because we initially were not sure how we were going to receive the customer calls. Early on, we began encouraging customers to email us. We had an increase in back office accounting processes because we're now applying those customer deposits prematurely to assist customers. That's a manual accounting process. So as a comparison, in 2019, we applied about 2,500 deposits, and this past year, 3,700, so a 48% increase. We also introduced a new customer portal during this time, and temporarily that created some additional payment files that needed to be imported and reconciled. We have seen a reduction in payment arrangements, most likely due to our announcing the suspension of disconnects, as well as other city and state officials discussing this as well in the media. So if you want a comparison, April, May, and June of last year to this year, we've seen about a 21% decrease in payment arrangements. This is the call activity for last year. We handled approximately 90,000 calls, which is just about a 3% increase over the prior year. The red line is the average wait time of 1 minute and 29 seconds for an average. This is significantly up from the average of 36 seconds the prior year. As you can see, wait times began to increase to almost 3.5 minutes in mid-January and February, and this was due to a variety of things. We had 6 vacancies, and we had some staff on leave. Then you can see in April that we were able to bring that wait time close to 1 minute. With the public counters closed, that helped us. We were able to utilize our cashiers and front counter staff to assist on the phones and bring that wait down in the recent months. For customer requests that came online and over the email, we received almost 12,500 requests. This is a 136% increase compared to pre-COVID. So most of these email transactions do take longer than telephone calls, but the benefit to us and the customer, it's convenient for the customer for sure, but the benefit to us is that we can work them during non-peak hours and prioritize them based on service request types and urgencies. So with a phone call, you have them lined up in queue, and it may be for a move-in that's not until next month. But you have that customer on the phone and they're waiting. So at least with the emails, we can sort them and then work them by priority. This is our accounts receivable balance from June 30th, and it represents all accounts that are currently open and customers who have moved and closed their accounts. It includes all services on the GWP bills and all bills and services that customer service is responsible to bill and collect. So in these balances is the electric, water, rubbish, sewer, hazardous waste, utility users tax, and fire permits. The balances do fluctuate month to month, and so do bills based on season, which is why some months are higher than others. However, our aging is rather consistent. So you can see from the table below that typically just 15% of our revenue is past due 30 days, and since COVID, that's increased to about 28% of our customers paying over that 30-day mark. If we drill down a bit and look at customers that are delinquent with account balances over 60 days, you can get a better idea of the impact. These are, again, all services billed, but these are only active accounts that are delinquent and delinquent over 60 days. On the left-hand side is a comparison of the average number of delinquent customers prior to shutdown and after. Typically, we'd have about 3% of our customers delinquent. At the end of June, it was about 5.5%. And again, this is the number of customers delinquent. On the right-hand side, these are the same customers, but the amounts of the delinquencies. And here you would typically see about 3% of the revenue delinquent, and in June it was about 13%. I do want to say that a large portion of that commercial delinquency is of about $650,000 is the fire billings that we bill annually. So that amount would bring without that amount, it would bring it down to about $740,000. So it's not quite as drastic as it's here on the chart. It's a little too early to tell if these customers will default. My feeling is that most will not. We will work with them. We'll amortize balances. From a historical perspective, during the recession from 2007 to 2009, we did not see an increase in customer default. I also just received our July month-end report today. There's a slight reduction in those balances of about $100,000 for both for each commercial and residential. So on a positive note, the balances are not increasing. They stayed stable for the month of July. This is just a reminder to our customers about the different payment options rather than coming to the office. They can make a payment online and go to our new web portal, which is my GWP, and the address for that is mygwp.glendaleca.gov. Once they register, which they do have to re-register even if they used our prior portal, they can sign up for auto pay to have their payment directly taken from their bank account. We also offer the Pay Near Me at any 7-Eleven anywhere in the country, and then of course they could pay by phone through our automated system. This is a reminder to our customers that we have the GWP Cares Bill Relief Program. It's a new temporary program that provides a one-time bill credit to eligible residential and commercial electric customers impacted by COVID. Residential customers who meet income guidelines and have been fired or laid off, furloughed, or had their work hours reduced or lost income may be eligible. Commercial customers who have been shut down for a period of 4 weeks or more and are not considered to be essential businesses would be eligible. The program is available from July 1st through October 30th. And the one-time bill credits are $150 for commercial electric accounts, $150 for single-family residential electric customers, $80 for multifamily, and $60 for the low-income electric customers. And those amounts were automatically provided. Customers don't have to apply for those. And then customers, if they want more information, can visit www.glendalewaterpower.com. Since the start of the program on July 1st, we've received over 650 applications, and then we've applied another 12,111 low-income customers their $60 credit. We continue to promote the program through our social media platforms, the website, and GWP and city newsletters. And then additionally, on July 28th, we started sending direct emails to our residential and business customers informing them about the program. And then if customers need to contact us for any reason, they can contact us by phone or by email, or they can also register for the My GWP customer portal, and they can send us messages, and there's certain services like starting and stopping service they can do through that portal as well. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. That was an excellent report. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Ms. Valier?
Well, this is Ted Flanagan. I'm impressed that you and your team were able to pivot so quickly and to take care of people so admirably. And I wonder, we don't need to discuss it now, but I wonder going forward whether, in a post-COVID world, we will be using some of the remote servicing that we've used in the current times. And again, congratulations on being so responsive to the needs. I don't need a response to that. That's just a comment.
Thank you.
I have a question. Regarding the CARES program, how much money do you anticipate has been spent to date, and how much do you think will still be needed?
I have Atine on the phone to answer any of these questions. Atine?
Good afternoon, members of Commission. This is Atine Hartunian, Marketing Manager. Commissioner, I don't have the numbers spent to date at the moment, but I know the cap for the program is set at $3 million. And we could revisit that if we reach the cap. Customers have until October 1st to submit their applications for this program. And just so you know, since we prepared that PowerPoint, our number of applications have gone up significantly because we've really marketed the program more in the last week or so. So we currently have 1,109 customers that have applied, in addition to the 12,111 that Tammy also mentioned that were automatically approved for the program. But we'd be happy to come back with the information as to how much money has been spent so far, so I can get back to you.
Well, this is Steve. I was able to get on the phone. I gave up on the computer. But as far as the money, we set aside $3 million, as the TNA said, in our public benefit charge account, with the ability to move some things around within there if we need to expend more. That was based on our estimate of the known. So those are the low-income folks that we already had currently enrolled, and a guesstimate on the number of folks who would meet the criteria. The criteria is pretty broad. We use the same federal criteria that the federal CARES program used. So the income brackets are a little bit larger on those than they would be in your traditional low income. So we had anticipated a $3 to $4 million expenditure if the program proved to be very successful. And as the TNA said, we got a slow start, and then we just went on a PR blitz within the last couple of weeks, and we'll continue that. It has resulted in a lot more applications, which is what we wanted to do, was to be able to try to help people out a little bit.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions? I have a brief question for you, Ms. Vallier. You said that at the beginning of the presentation, you discussed, having a plan in place to switch to remote. And I was just wondering, at some point then, the utility must have put together a disaster plan. Was this part of a disaster plan that had been around for a long time? What does that plan look like?
This was really part of a plan that we have internally within customer service in case our systems go down. Sometimes our CSI system will go down or our phone systems will go down. So we do have some plans in place. I think early on when we started to think that, we already knew that we had some staff that needed to get out of the office, and so we were already brainstorming about how we were going to do that, which is how we came up with the leaving the messages for callbacks. And then with the cooperation from our ISD department, the city's IS department, they were able to retain the SB 350 phones for us very quickly. And I believe GWP customer service were the first ones to be issued those.
Got it. Thank you. Any further questions? If not, we'll move to the next item.
4C, Annual Water Quality Report.
President Pro Tem Lowell, this is Michael DeGhetto, Chief AGM for Water, and I want to introduce James Sines, our Water Quality Manager, who's going to give the presentation today on our Consumer Confidence Report. And I think you remember back, normally I would bring the whole water quality team in and introduce them to the commission, which obviously is kind of difficult now. But James oversees a staff of 8 folks that are really in charge of maintaining and ensuring the quality of the water within the whole city. James has been at the utility for 7 years now, and he's got his water distribution operator grade 5 certification, his water treatment operator grade 3 certification. So I'm gonna turn it over to James, and he'll go over, like we do every year.
Good, how you doing?
The Consumer Confidence Report.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm James Sines, Water Quality Manager, and this is the Annual Water Quality Report. I'll just go through a brief overview of the history of water quality regulations and the Consumer Confidence Report. Just a brief history, prior to the 19th century, water quality was kind of based on aesthetics. If it looked good, it smelled good, it tastes good, then it was, kind of one of those things everybody thought it was good. Water was never really considered a source of disease. Usually, people attributed the disease to the odor that was in the air. They called it miasma. It was kind of the vapors rising from the swamps and the decaying matter in the atmosphere. The first act of water quality management was in the mid-1800s when the tens of thousands of people were dying of cholera in England. And Dr. John Snow believed this disease to be waterborne. And even though his colleagues thought he knew nothing what he was talking about, he was able to prove and identify the source of the disease from a water pump and remove that pump from service and stop the spread of the disease. As far as regulation, back in 1948, the Federal Water Pollution Control Act was the first major U.S. law to address water pollution. And in 1972, the Clean Water Act amended the 1948 Act and protects U.S. waters from pollution. In 1974, we had the Safe Drinking Water Act, and that protects all drinking water. That's primary and secondary standards for water quality, and it's enforced by California's State Water Resources Control Board's Division of Drinking Water. Safe Drinking Water Act sets primary and secondary standards. Primary standards are limited to short-term acute health effects, such as viruses and pathogenic bacteria, limits on constituents with chronic long-term health effects, such as carcinogens. And secondary standards address constituents that affect aesthetics of water, such as taste, odor, and color. On Glendale's compliance, we collect about 1,000 samples a year. We test for both regulated and unregulated constituents in the water. A large percentage of our samples we collect are bacteriological samples. We do that to prevent any bacteriological growth in the water system. We monitor for chlorine or chloramine residual in the water. And we also manage the operation of the Glendale Operator Unit, which treats water from 9 local groundwaters here on the San Fernando Basin. The Consumer Confidence Report, it contains the previous year's sampling results. So some categories include detected regulated contaminants, unregulated contaminants, and then a summary of the citywide sampling data that we collect. It also has other detected constituents of interest. It will also include any other additional information on specific constituents, and we also added a frequently asked questions section. The Consumer Confidence Report, or Annual Water Quality Report, comes out the 1st of July of each year. It can be found at our website, glendalewaterandpower.com, or hard copies can be requested by calling customer service. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Thank you for that report. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you for that report. I especially like the early history of water quality.
No, I don't have questions either. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, Madam Clerk, next item.
4D, Show Biogas Project Update.
Doreen, you can go right ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioner President Law, Commission members. My name is Doreen Martirosian.
We can't hear you.
Oh, yeah, I don't think your mic is on.
Can you hear me now?
Now that's better,
Perfect.
yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commission President, Commission members. My name is Doreen Martirosian. On behalf of Glendale Water and Power, we are very excited to present to you the Shoal Biogas Project update. The draft environmental impact report was published on July 2nd. The public comment period closes on September 30th. So today, Maurice will be presenting an update about the project, the timelines, and what we can expect in the next upcoming months. We will be happy to answer any procedural questions that the commission may have from staff. However, at the end of the comment period, we will be putting together responses to every question. We are recording every question that comes our way via email at this public meeting. We'll go through every comment and question, and comprehensive responses will be put together and published at the end of the public comment period. So with that, I will turn it over to Maurice.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. All right, so I'll start off with a quick project history. I know we have some new commissioners, and that's why we wanted to just kind of do a brief, introduction to the project. I'm sure some of you are not familiar with this. Those of you veterans who have been around a while, I'm sure you remember the mitigated negative declaration that we did a few years ago for the exact same project. So just a short history. So previously, the initial study and associated CEQA analysis found that there were no unavoidable significant impacts, and therefore a mitigative negative declaration was prepared. And I think it was on March 31st, 2018, before the Glendale Planning Commission, they recommended that we do a full EIR instead of just doing the mitigative negative declaration. And I think one of the main, there were some reasons for that, but one of the main reasons was I think they wanted to do an alternatives analysis to look at some alternatives. So that's where we are today, and this is our current project timeline. We're doing our full environmental impact report. So March 21st, 2019, we released the notice of preparation, informing everybody, including regulatory agencies, that we were planning on doing an environmental impact report. And the public comment period, there was a public comment period, I think it was about 30 days. Yeah, that's about right. So March 21st to April 22nd, 2019, that was last year, there was a public comment period where all interested parties, stakeholders, anybody who wanted to comment, including public agencies and regulatory agencies, they were all notified, and we had those comments. April 4th, during that public comment period, early on, was April 4th, 2019, we had 2 public scoping meetings, and those were noticed in the mailers that we sent out, so everybody knew about it well in advance. And there was, I forgot about how many people showed up, but it was relatively well attended. I'm thinking maybe 30 to 50 people, if I remember correctly. And there was one at 2 p.m. and one at 6 p.m. It was in our the police community room. And let's see, that was last year. And then we started working on the EIR. And we basically released the draft EIR July 2nd, about a month ago. And instead of just doing the statutory required, I think it's 45-day public comment period, we're going to go ahead and give, I think, everybody about 90 days. Actually, a little bit more, 90, might be 91, 92 days. But just everybody that's listening, and this was also noticed to everybody, if you want us to make comments, you have to do so by September 30th, 2020. And at the last slide, we'll have the individual and how you can make your public comments. All right, so that's, let's see, then the last 2 bullets are kind of estimates. We're kind of guessing and kind of estimating that we should have our response to comments done by December 2020, by the end of the year. We will respond to every single comment that's submitted in writing, and it will be part of the final EIR. And then we're assuming sometime in January, February, we'll be doing the public meetings and going before the Planning Commission and the City Council to certify the EIR. All right, so just a short project description. The plan or the project includes the installation of 4 internal combustion engines up at the Shoal landfill, which is off the 134 at Figueroa. I think most of us are familiar with that location. The 4 internal combustion engines will be sited up there, and the landfill gas that we are currently flaring the idea is to basically, instead of just flaring it and having it be used for nothing, why not turn it into electricity and get 100% RPS credits for that renewable energy. And it's important to mention that this is, everybody talks about solar and wind and all these other renewable energy sources. The nice thing about this type of renewable energy, it's 24/7. Doesn't matter if it's windy. Doesn't matter if the sun's out. It's just a continuous 24/7 production of energy that's renewable, fully renewable. Part of the project also includes the construction of 2 new water tanks, a 60,000 gallon and a 10,000 gallon water tank. The 60,000 gallon water tank is pretty much dedicated just to firefighting. That was part of the wildfire analysis and also our fire department requirements. So the idea is that 60,000 gallons will just be sitting there and it's ready to be used in the event of a fire. And I think it's the amount that for a 2-hour firefighting activity up there. So again, that really mitigates the fire risk. And then the 10,000 gallon water tank, the idea is to replace, I think it's about 10,000 up there, it might be 15,000, but just put a new water tank. And that's just going to be for the use, for the domestic use on site, for the toilets, the restrooms, the hand sinks, etc. It also involves the construction of a new 2/3 of a mile natural gas makeup pipeline, and we'll connect that to the Southern California gas main on Glen Oaks Canyon at the end of Glen Oaks. And the reason why I put makeup gas or makeup pipeline is just to make it clear that this gas line is not really a full gas makeup for the engines. It's basically the type of engines that are going in need a little bit of natural gas to start, and to get the 100% renewable credits, we can't use more than 10% of the total volume of gas in each engine. So it'll be much less than 10%, but it could be up. The regulations allow up to 10% of natural gas to be burned inside of those engines, but we expect it to be a lot less. Again, just mainly on startup for each engine. It also involves the decommissioning of the existing 5-mile pipeline, and that pipeline is the pipeline that we've been using since 1994 to take the landfill gas and burn it down at our Grayson power plant. So if this project moves forward, we will decommission that pipeline. There's a quick little, for those of us that aren't familiar where the Shoal Canyon landfill is, it's not too detailed, but that's in our EIR. Gives you a general idea. It's right off the 134 at Figueroa, and you drive up this hill, and that's where the landfill is located. This is a picture of existing conditions. This is pretty much what we have up there now. You can see the 12, well, I guess if you enlarge that a little bit, you might be able to see the 12 flares. Can you guys see this little arrow? No, you can't on my computer. So anyways, there's 12 flares. They're kind of a little red at the top. You can kind of see those existing 12 flares. That's what we're using right now to flare the gas. Off to the left of that is the existing, oh, thank you, Catalina. Yeah, right there are the flares. And then off to the left of that is our existing gas compression and cleanup facility that we used to use to send the gas down to Grayson. And here's kind of an overview, a bird's eye view of the new, I mentioned that there's going to be a new 2/3 of a mile gas line. That's a yellow pipeline off to the kind of the bottom left there, going down to Glen Oaks Canyon. And I've mentioned the new 60,000 gallon water tank and the 10,000 gallon water tank. There's a water main that is being proposed to feed those. And this is kind of I guess not too clear, but it kind of gives you an idea. It's kind of, I don't know if everybody can see that kind of hatched area that says landfill, gas compressor, and conditioning systems. That's a little kind of dotted area in the middle there. That's going to be where we're going to place those. Thank you. Perfect. Before we're going to place that equipment. And then the large dotted line, yeah, I think that's very clear, is kind of the boundary of the project of what we're proposing. Off to the right, you see a big circle and a little circle. The big circle is a 60,000 gallon water tank. Thank you. And the small circle is a 10,000 proposed gallon water tank. And there's some fencing and some other minor things, but that's pretty much the gist of the project. So just to summarize, the EIR, by the way, I didn't mention this, but the EIR can be accessed on our city's webpage. There's various ways you can get it. One is going to our Glendale Water and Power website. The easiest way is just to go to the city's homepage. That's www.glendaleca.gov. And then in the search, just put in Shoal Biogas DEIR. And I think the first thing that pops up, if you click on it, that's kind of the link to the EIR and also all the other stuff we've done with the project. It's our biogas project site. So For those of us that have a lot of time on our hands, are very interested, I recommend reading the whole EIR. It's very long and lengthy, but I find it very exciting. I hope everyone else does. So there's the summary, a nice little 4 bullets for everybody who doesn't want to read all that. So the project, we had 4 alternatives that were analyzed. In addition to what we're proposing, the one is no project, just do nothing, and leave the project as, leave the landfill as is and continue flaring. And then 2 would be to convert the existing landfill gas at the LFG to natural gas. And what we mean by natural gas is clean it up to the SoCal gas pipeline standards. And then the third alternative that was analyzed is convert the landfill gas to liquid natural gas. And this would, obviously be for off-site. The idea would be to transport off-site, but that's an alternative we looked at. And then the fourth one is move the 4 proposed engines. There's 4 proposed engines up at the Shoal Canyon landfill right now in this project. One of the alternatives we looked at would be, let's take those 4 engines and move them down to the existing Grayson power plant. That's the fourth alternative. And there was other alternatives that were considered. Some of these were in direct results to the public comments we received at the scoping meeting on April 4th. And also, prior to that, I mentioned that we did a mitigated negative declaration for the exact same project, or very similar project, a couple of years ago. And we had a lot of comments on that. So some of these alternatives we took from some of the public comments we received, and some of them, we did our own. But so I'll summarize them. So one would be to generate electricity in microturbines. Another one would be to generate electricity in combustion turbines. Another one was reduce the number of engines. We're proposing 4, right, for 12 megawatts of electricity. Each one would produce about 3 megawatts at 80% load. This alternative would be to reduce that to only 3 engines. And then the fourth one would be to generate electricity with fuel cells. And the 5th one would be to convert landfill gas to compressed natural gas. That's the CNG most people are familiar with, and that's usually used to fuel, as an example, a lot of our trash trucks use compressed natural gas. All right, so just to summarize, or I guess to clarify, if you want to submit comments, I am not Eric Krause. I think some of you I probably should put my name on this. I realized that just now. But so my name's again, Maurice Oyla-Figuera. I'm the Environmental Program Administrator for Water and Power. However, to submit comments for the CEQA draft EIR, this is who you want to submit the comments to. So it's Eric Krause, Deputy Director of Community Development, and that's his address, and that's his email address as well. And that's also in the EIR when you go to our webpage, and also the notices that we sent out. Other than that, I think that concludes my brief presentation. I'll be more than happy to answer questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Commissioners, I'd like to open the floor for your questions.
Thank you. This is Ted Flanagan, and thank you, Maurice, for that very clear presentation. The topic excites me also, and I think a little history. I think Glendale Water and Power deserves great credit for being one of the first utilities in the area to do methane collection, which of course is a very responsible thing to do. Methane is a highly potent greenhouse gas. It just released into the atmosphere. I think it's about 43 times the potency of carbon dioxide. So capturing methane is critical. And I think what I've learned over the past few months, and I have spoken to Maurice about this before, is that the real issue at Shoal Canyon is the poor quality gas. And Maurice, I'm going to ask you to speak to that in a second, but it's really taken this methane that could be an asset, a renewable source of fuel, 100% renewable, RPS compliant. It could be an asset, but in this case, as I understand it, and nobody has ever given me a particularly cogent explanation of why our landfill gas is worse than most landfills. But what I'm hearing is that our landfill gas has very low methane content and very high levels of contaminants, and that over time the methane content will go down as the methane production of the landfill goes down. So we have a sort of a shrinking base of poor quality gas. But Maurice, if you could just speak to the quality issue, and then what I have mentioned to you before is, and I think that the public is going to be keen to hear is what would it cost to clean this up? I mean, it's not, maybe it's prohibitive. It's probably prohibitive, but what would it be? So if you could just sort of summarize some of the things you've taught me about the quality of gas or the low quality of the gas, and then some of the costs that I think could drive, if we could possibly clean up the gas, we've got lots of options. I've been working for the college. We're considering putting in fuel cells there. We could take that gas if it were clean enough, right? But Maurice, if you could just address quality and cost, please.
Yeah, sure, Ted. Actually, you raised a good point. I probably should have clarified that when I did my presentation, because it kind of sounds like, you know, when I say landfill gas, I guess most people would think that's almost pure methane. So that's a very good point. Our methane varies. You know, it varies a little bit here and there. As an example, usually when it rains, we'll notice a little bit slight increase in the gas quality, and that's usually because, you know, we have a pretty effective gas collection system at the landfill. No matter how effective your gas collection system is, it's not 100%, as you would know. So when it rains, we find, you know, I'm talking, you know, 2-3 days of rain, not just a little light, you know, shower. But so sometimes it almost produces like a cap or a seal, and there's absolutely, you know, no air intrusion going into the gas collection system. So our methane might jump, you know, from 31% to 35%. But generally speaking, our methane content, what I mean by percent, is the total volume of gas. So if you have 1 liter of gas that you're sucking out of the landfill, about 0.3 to 0.33 would be our, you know, percentage of methane gas out of the landfill. So that's one of the reasons why, if you happen to read the entire EIR, the internal combustion engine seems to be a little bit more applicable here because of that low content methane. If you go with turbines or something like that, you usually need a little bit higher content. And there's other reasons, you know, compressing the gas and removing the pollutants, like you said. It has to be much cleaner gas if you're going to put in a turbine or something like that. So these internal combustion engines suit this landfill fine and perfectly. So as far as cost, you know, I didn't perform the analysis in the EIR. We had a consultant do that. So I don't want to step on anyone's toes and speak out of turn. And so, you know, we're going to receive a lot of comments on the cost. So we will respond to those comments in great detail after September 30th, and our consultant will be taking the lead on that.
And maybe I can follow up a little bit on this for the commissioners. And this is just, I think, primarily showing my age. So I think I'm the last one standing that was there originally when we built the project that sent the gas to Shoal. And the gas quality is, as Maurice indicated, has always hovered around 30 to 35%, usually below 35%. And Commissioner Flanagan, I've asked that same question you did. I don't know how many times, and I've never gotten a cogent answer either. One of the issues we deal with is we are in a dry climate, in the Southwest climate, and that stifles production of methane. Landfills in the South and the Southeast that get a lot of humidity, moisture, and rain produce much higher levels. Also, our canyon, although pretty deep, is a relatively shallow canyon, and even in Pointy Hills, which was the Sand District's largest facility, they were doing some deep well drilling in order to try to bring up some higher quality methane, and I'm talking about 110 to 150 feet of drilling, and we just didn't have that capability at Shoal, nor was it cost effective to do that. So we've kind of then had to live with this gas. And when we were transporting it to Grayson to burn it, it was only about a 50% mix. We had to put 50% of natural gas in there as well in order for it to effectively fire the turbines. And even then it became it's very caustic. Other constituents in the gas, it ate the equipment away, and eventually the emissions were such that we had to stop, and we had to coordinate with the AQMD on alternative plans. So, as Maurice said, when we were looking at it, there are engines that a couple of manufacturers make that are made to burn, forgive me, but lousy quality gas and do it pretty effectively, and that's why we were looking at this particular option. And as Maurice also said, you know, turbines and other high-tech equipment do not function well on this low quality of gas. We did at one time, several years ago, look at upgrading to pipeline quality, and it was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 times the cost of what it would take to use it as fuel to produce electricity. And in that case, we could ostensibly use that gas at the end of the day to run a turbine or an engine as well. But you end up having to pay 4 to 5 times what the cost would be versus just taking it out of the landfill as it is and burning it. So that was one of the factors that played into it. Although we'll, again, as Maurice said, we will be discussing that once the comment period is over and we begin to vet the alternatives. But it has been a frustrating point for us for a long time that the gas has been, at that quality.
Thank you both for those answers.
All right, Commissioner Flanagan, do you have any further questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Jasmandarian?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. What is the generic project budget for this project, for the proposed project?
We estimated this would be $30 million.
And what's the output again? The estimated output?
Well, 12 megawatts of 100% renewable electricity.
And
With
how?
zero transmission costs.
Oh, I like that. You had me at transmission.
Yeah, it'll be tied right into our grid, so there's no need to transmit it.
Right, okay. And we can't send the gas to Grayson because of this poor quality. This is the first time I'm really hearing in depth about I knew that the quality generally of landfill gas was less than natural gas, but I didn't realize that the gas from Shoal Canyon was of particularly low quality, and it does make sense hearing you give the backstory about the dry climate we live in. So, if we wanted to clean it up to the point of being able to transport it to a future Grayson, it would just be prohibitively expensive. Did I understand you correctly?
Yes, it's very costly, but in full disclosure, because it go back to Maurice's PowerPoint, one of the alternatives is you put the engines that we're proposing at Grayson versus having them at Shoal.
Okay.
So that's an alternative. The problem is that the emissions are significantly increased by going to Grayson versus the landfill, and the first interceptor or receptor, is much closer. In other words, there's neighborhoods that are much closer. Elevation of the landfill contributes towards a better emissions result, but those are all going to be covered, or they are covered in the EIR. But I just wanted to be sure is you could take the engine and potentially put it at Grayson and burn the gas as it is.
Okay. In the EIR, do they compare side by side what the emissions are from flaring the gas versus what the emissions would be if the gas was consumed or burned in a turbine? Is
Yes,
flaring the gas considered considered the existing condition?
So to answer your question, go ahead, Steve.
The flare is the existing condition.
Okay.
So go ahead, Maurice.
Yeah, so I think your question was, you mentioned turbines, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I think Maurice, let me just interrupt. The question is flaring versus what we're proposing. Obviously, the turbines is something we can't do because it's already proven to be detrimental. But the proposed engines compared side by side with the flares.
Yes.
If I have Ms. Law's question down.
You do.
Yes, that is in the EIR.
Right. And so for folks who want to do a deep dive on this, there would be a chart or there'd be ways to compare side by side. This is what the existing condition is where we're flaring the gas versus what the emissions would be if we build the proposed project.
Correct.
Okay. What is the role of this commission in relation to this project? Is this informational, or will we have an opportunity at some future point to be able to make a recommendation to City Council? Or I understand it's going to Planning Commission, so would it be unusual to have two commissions weigh in on a project like this?
Commission President Lull, Commission members, the Glendale Water and Power Commission can make recommendations regarding the project. The project is going to the Planning Commission because there are permits involved that are within the purview of the Planning Commission. However, the GWP Commission, if it's desirous of making a recommendation, it could absolutely make one, yes.
Okay.
Well, and let me just kind of clarify too, because sometimes we get caught up in this. Is the EIR process isn't necessarily the approval of the project. It's just simply, adhering to the CEQA standards. But I would bring back some report in some fashion to you when the process has completed. So if you looked at Maurice's timeline, if everything holds together, that might be towards the end of 2020, the beginning of 2021. We could come back and talk to you a little bit as an update and what the findings were. And certainly you could pass on your thoughts and recommendations if that's the case that we would take to the council when we bring it back to them. Certainly document that. And anything you have a question of today regarding the project, we'll record that and make sure it gets in the formal process as well.
I mean, I think I'm curious to know how this project fits into the overall portfolio of all of the resources that the utility is using to produce electricity. That's my area of interest.
Okay. I mean, I can, to a certain point, answer that, and it's something we've been planning on for some time. It's an integral part because it is one of the stated 100% RPS eligible alternative energy sources that we can use, along with, small hydro, solar, wind, and geothermal. So this fits very well into our portfolio from a couple of reasons. One, diversity. Keeping our portfolio diverse. As Maurice said, it's a 24/7, so we don't have the intermittency issue that you do with solar and wind, although batteries have certainly come a long way in helping that particular issue. So as I had said to each of the city council members during some briefings we had on GWP, we're gonna be struggling to get every single percent of RPS, which is 60 by 2030, and then 100% clean and renewable. So it doesn't necessarily have to be all of the categorized renewable areas, but we have to be clean, non-fossil, non-carbon. It's going to be a real struggle for us as it is for others. So any potential project like this, and especially as Commissioner Flanagan indicated, you're taking this very vital byproduct of the landfilling operation that is extremely detrimental to the environment, and you're harnessing it, and you're creating a very positive end use, which is clean electricity, which then allows you to further our goals and the goals of the state of California.
What is the estimated project lifespan?
Well, we were pretty conservative in our estimates, and we did the gas curve, which is the analysis of the gas at about a 20-year life. However, I can tell you that the inactive side of the landfill, for those of you that are familiar with the area, it's where the golf course is. That particular part of the landfill closed in 1975, and it still produces gas. Now, obviously, that gas production begins to drop, and as it gets older, it drops more precipitously. But just to give you an idea, we were conservative in our estimates, but we expect that gas is going to continue to flow for a long time. It could be 30, 40 years, 50 years maybe. It may not be enough to generate 12 megawatts, but we will certainly continue to harness it and use it as we go on. But again, we wanted to be somewhat conservative in our projections.
Okay.
Can I follow up with another question, please?
You may.
Is that okay? Thank you. We got pretty close there. I think, I don't know whether I missed it or not, but Commissioner Lal started off by trying to compare the emissions of flaring versus, I think you mentioned a turbine, and then Mr. Zern corrected that and said the real comparison is between flaring and the proposed engines, internal combustion engines. And I've been through the EIR. It's an incredible document. It's lengthy. And I don't think many of the residents are going to spend too much time going through it. Some will, but can we answer the question simply for the public that the internal combustion engines are cleaner burning than flaring, or is that not a valid statement to make?
I think the question you're asking, certainly we'll document it today and make sure it's included and it's answered as part of the process. We will do that, and we'll try to do it in as simple a manner as we can, comparing the emissions of the engines. We'll consider what you just asked an official question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, because what we're doing is, an engine, we talk about engines burning fuel, and then, when you flare, you are also burning fuel. So what is the difference between these two methods? We understand that the end result is that on one side you get power and on the other you don't. You just, it's just burned and it goes up into the atmosphere. So what is really the concrete difference between those two activities when they could appear so similar?
Right, and I think, a rather simple answer is, based on AQMD regulations, you're going to have to meet the emissions requirements either way. So they're going to be pretty similar, or they're going to be below what the standards AQMD sets. But I don't want to say specifically what they are, because that I don't know offhand. We'll just have to answer the question and put the specifics of the emissions. But regardless of what goes up there, you have to meet AQMD guidelines, and they're pretty strict when it comes to the processing and destruction of methane.
So the AQMD guidelines would govern whatever is there, either whether it's a flare or whether it's an engine.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I think that addresses the questions that I had. If the commissioners have any further questions, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll move on. Thank you for that overview of the project. It's very helpful. Appreciate the presentation and appreciate future conversations on this issue. It's an important project. Madam Clerk, next item.
5, oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Commission may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The general manager may refer the matter to appropriate staff for investigation and report.
Do we have any comments?
No, we don't.
Okay. Should we move to the next item, Madam Clerk?
6, agenda forecast.
Members of the commission, so this is the look ahead for our next few meetings. We are going to cancel the regularly scheduled meeting in September, and we normally do because it has historically fallen right in the holiday weekend, but we have an issue that we want to ensure that we get back to you in September, and we're shooting for mid-September the 14th, which is the report on the clean energy alternatives. So it will be categorized and publicized as a special meeting. I believe Ms. Lee, if she hasn't already, was polling all of you to see if the 14th works. And if it doesn't for the majority, and we'd like to get everybody involved in this particular one, we were going to be flexible in how we moved it around. But that's where our target date for that is. And we're going to dedicate that meeting to this discussion. It's a pretty good amount of time we need to make the presentation and then have some discussion about it as well. And we'll have multiple presenters, Mr. Young, Mr. Keenan, Ms. Godinez, and we have some outside assistants to go over the modeling and the financial analysis as well. So we want to make sure we take some time to talk about this. And then in October, we have the GWP elections. We'll give a strategic plan update. This is our renewable portfolio update. Hopefully we have our power content label by then, water resources update, and then we come back with what is our regular quarterly legislative update. And I apologize, I missed Leo's. I'm sure it was an excellent presentation. One of the things to add to legislation that we'll be pursuing is based on a decision by the City Council last Tuesday to direct us to draft an ordinance banning the sale of Mylar balloons in the city of Glendale, and to further work with at least our local legislators initially to see about, once again, for those of you familiar with the issue, it has been before the legislature many times in different forms, but once again to see if we can help author or craft something for consideration of alternatives to the metallic Mylar balloons that have caused so much damage and cost to the utility, not just Glendale Water and Power, to utilities across the state and across the country. So we want to see if we can address that, and the council has been extremely supportive in pushing that forward. And then the general elections in December, that's getting out there a ways. And obviously when we do the look ahead, we have, the schedule tends to be a little lacking in detail, but we add as we go on. Something else that I will come up in this time period is we're going to bring to you a discussion on on-site generation. So folks that are looking at things like cogen and fuel cells, we're going to talk about those. We're going to talk about rates, special rate schedules for those kind of installations, but most importantly, talk about how those tie in or don't tie in to our sustainability goals and clean energy objectives in GWP. So I'm hoping that maybe that's a November discussion, just as a thought.
It sounds good to me.
And then really everything will start to come to fruition in the new year. So that's where you'll start to see the EIR that we talked about today for the biogas project coming back in a report to you. That's when you'll start to see the remainder, the Grayson EIR will be coming back, and that's probably spring of next year. And so there'll be a report to you folks on that and a discussion on that. And so it'll be pretty busy that first part of the year with the items primarily related to our generation and our clean energy objectives. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do you think we'll do a demolition at Grayson in 2021?
Well, that would be great if we could. If we could start at least in 2021. I won't give you a month. Let's say December 2021. I think chances are good, but there's a lot of issues we still need to address and a lot of hurdles that we need to speak to. So that's our objective. We would love to be able to get it, a start sometime in 2021.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any comments on the meetings as laid out?
I just want to say thank you to GWP. I'm looking forward to the special meeting on the clean energy alternatives, and I'm also looking forward to the discussion of on-site generation in particular. So That's great. Much appreciated.
So thank you. I have no questions, but let's meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, well, with that being said, I think that this agenda is fine, so we can start to wrap up the meeting. I did want to bring one thing up, if it's okay, which is that I had intended at the beginning of the meeting to ask the general manager and Mr. Zern what impacts there had been on GWP operations because of the pandemic. And we had a wonderful presentation regarding customer service and interfacing with GWP customers, which was very detailed in describing how they've adjusted their operations to respond to the pandemic. But I just wanted to ask Mr. Zern, was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think, and Tammy's to be complimented, the customer service group was boy, they did, as I think Mr. Flanagan said, pivoted very well and were extremely productive and helpful, even working remotely. And I think to follow up on a question or a point, a comment that Mr. Flanagan made is, yeah, I definitely think there's some things that have occurred as a result of COVID that we were forced to do that may very well be the best practices in going forward, whether it's just a matter of more remote meetings and having less travel and that kind of thing. But I think there are some very positive things that have come out of this as well. And I think, the business industry in general, I know there was a special section of the Wall Street Journal today that indicated a lot of the things that we've experienced as a result of COVID and shutdowns and remote working are probably here to stay and will become part of the norm. So I think they did great. You all may or may not have seen a very recent, I think it was yesterday, investigative news report that was done that's singled out LADWP as having a lot of their field staff at home being paid. And so that's just something, I don't know the specifics of it, so I'm not going to speak any further than that. But for GWP, our field folks were constantly working. We did adjust schedules and practices to limit contact, to keep crews together, so that in case there was an exposure, it was minimized. Our guys worked initially a 3-12 schedule and then 4 hours standby, and we pivoted to a 4-10 work schedule, which we're on right now, and we'll probably keep at least until the pandemic ceases. But it's worked very, very well for us, and that includes all of water and all of the electric operations. The power plant, Howard Dispatch, the trading operation, these folks never stopped working. The trading operation can work remotely, but we had a lot of people here on staff. Howard Sub works every day of the year, and 24/7, and obviously the power plant. So we maintained those schedules and just did our best to keep areas sanitized, to keep our folks with the proper gear on to protect themselves, and did as much social distancing as we could within the workplace. We've been pretty lucky as far as exposure rates and positive testing. And I think a lot of that had to do with maintaining these practices. And our employees, took it to heart and did what they needed to do to stay safe. So we've been very fortunate so far, and hopefully that continues.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Maybe on another occasion I could ask you, maybe if it's agendized, I don't know, or at the beginning of the comment period on our next meeting, differences between that you've noticed in terms of power consumption or water consumption, and how GWP has responded to that, if it's been significant at all. I don't know if it has. But I think the larger issue is that, we live in an area prone to natural disasters. This has been, unfortunately, the pandemic has been a human catastrophe. with impacts on human beings and on our behavior. But we're also prone to things like earthquakes, and I don't need to give you the list, you know better than I do. But it's fires are a big one. And it's important and really relevant to see how the utility pivots when, did we lose you, Steve?
No, I'm still here.
Okay, I heard a funny sound there. How the utility is able to pivot in a dynamic situation like that, an emergency situation, to shift operations, to shift people, to shift resources. I think that ability to be responsive in emergencies is kind of a core competency that needs to be cultivated and supported in our utility because of our location. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, we certainly could put something on the agenda and talk about that. I think we're fortunate in that just the nature of our business has a lot of, in our day-to-day operations,
Right.
emergency response
Right.
components to it. Our folks take very seriously when the power goes out or the water is interrupted, and they make that an emergency and respond accordingly. But yeah, I think certainly we can talk about that a little bit more, and I will bring back something that just talks about consumption rates. So we did see some changes. Certainly the warmer weather has affected it, but when you're talking about, you have a lot less business and commercial, a lot more residential use, but I'll bring something back that talks a little bit about that.
Yeah, at a time when you feel, be a good sort of marker to compare with other years, I'll leave it with you as to when you want to bring that back. I'd appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
We'll
Thank
do that.
you. Thank you very much. Okay, so agenda forecast has been taken care of. I think we're on to our next item.
7, adjournment.
Could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I motion to.
Okay. I don't know which of you motioned and which of you seconded, but I think that we've covered our bases and we're good to go. Thank you very much.
Thank
Meeting
you.
is
Take care.
adjourned.